Good morning, good morning. We're already on the final stretch before Christmas. That's why in today's episode, I'll suggest a table decoration for you, a centerpiece to put on the table, this time in a more modern, slightly glamorous version. And now I invite you to the next episode, which will be on Sunday, where I'll show you a Christmas arrangement, but this time in a more rustic style. I encourage you now to also turn on the notification bell and subscribe if you haven't done it yet. So let's get started. So, my dear friends, let's start with this glamorous arrangement in white, silver, and transparent colors, with, of course, some green accents. For this arrangement, I already have a plate prepared, a decorative plate, a plastic plate with a bit of shine, so a shiny silver plate that I want to use as my base, and I want it to be visible, so I won't be covering it up too much with this modern arrangement. Greenery. I've already prepared the sponges, floral foam, the kind we'll use to make the decoration. Look, these are miniatures. Why? Because this will be glued to the plate. I'll tell you about it in a moment. But why such miniatures? Because I would like this arrangement to be kind of transparent, let's say a little airy, and I don't want there to be too much greenery. That's why I won't be able to cover them. That's why they're so tiny. Will I be able to make an arrangement in these two little sponges? You'll see in a moment. Of course, I also have candles, pretty big candles. Usually, I use one candle in these arrangements, but this time I wanted to use two big ones, so we'll secure them. I have great decorations, ornaments, transparent and matte baubles, so we'll use those too. And besides that, I have a beautiful branch from a meta sequoia. Well, I mentioned this year that the meta sequoia has cones for the first time, and of course I couldn't resist using them. Look how fantastic these cones are, and they're actually going to be the main part of my decoration. And of course there will be some fresh green spruce just picked straight from the garden, not mine, because as you know, I don't have spruces like that in my garden, but my neighbors do, so I always use their plants for help. First of all, of course, I attach these sponges using hot glue sponges. I already planned earlier where they should go because I wanted to see how it would look with the candles. So I placed them a little bit apart from each other side by side so that the candles can be attached to them. And when I attach the candles, I'll tell you in a moment, look, it's a little bit apart. The sponges are not in the center, they're just slightly shifted because it's going to be asymmetrical. It'll go beyond the plate, they won't be in the middle. Of course, you can put them in the center, group them together, or you can place them on the side like I'm doing. And I encourage you right away to comment. Maybe your vision is to put it in the center. So when I'm done, let me know if you like my version of this slanted arrangement, or would you prefer it to be in the center, for example? If we already have these sponges attached, they need a moment to bond together, the glue, the heat, the plastic. It takes a moment for it to bond, and I'll use that time now to warm up the team. Listen, I cut the wires. I cut a wire like this. I'm heating it over a lit candle so that I can put it into this main candle and make it my mounting. I'm heating it so it's easier to insert it into the candle from the bottom. On each, at least 2 or 3, depending on how strong you want it to be attached. I'll use 3 close together. Remember to check if these candles aren't brittle because candles can vary. Here, I just insert it from the bottom. When it's heated, it goes in more easily. I let it go. It's good to do this with some pliers to hold it firmly, and then it fits in nicely. And the most important thing is to heat it up well, because if we don't, the candle might crack or chip and it'll be harder to insert. And so on and so on. So I'll put it in the second one as well in a moment, and soon I'll be sticking it into this sponge. The candles are ready. Now let's attach them to the sponge. When I do this, of course, I'll use my hot glue, a lot of glue on these wires, mainly so that it attaches nicely to the sponge. Remember, the glue is very hot, so handle it carefully. It's wise to prepare in advance. To arrange it so that it's more or less straight, of course, and check how it's going to look. So that we don't make unnecessary holes in this foam, because as I mentioned, there's very little of it. That's why it's necessary. Not attach and fasten it now and hold it for a bit. Let it bond together. And it will stick, and then we'll start working. I think it is, but I'm not sure it's straight since I can't see. I believe it's roughly straight. We have the base, and now we'll add decorations to this base. Look at these beautiful branches with cones from Meta Sequoia. They will come out from both sides. I'll allow myself to turn it a little just to see how it looks. It's okay. And now I'll arrange these branches, of course all of them. I can gently glue them in so they're compact and cohesive, so they hold together better. First, I make a shape to get the form. There you go, and it's ready. The shape is great on both sides. And now, between these two branches, I'll work with the rest, meaning more branches again. I'm cutting them into smaller pieces. Shorter, longer. And I can also paste them. I can also paste them in a way that slightly widens them here. But not too much, because I'd like the arrangement not to cover my whole base, my whole plate. So here there will be very short elements that we'll be placing here. Later I'll add some greenery, and then I'll move on to the decorations like these little ornaments. Look how beautifully they reflect the light. They reflect me right away. Of course, I'll take off their little hooks and place them like this, because that's the way I really like it. The base is done. My dear friends, my hands are so fast that the camera can't keep up. So I already started gluing things without realizing the camera wasn't running. I've already put on 2 big baubles as such, as a kind of framework for my whole arrangement, and I've already started adding greenery. So my candle, which I'll cut into little pieces with inscriptions, you need to trim the branch a little so it goes into the sponge more easily. Add a bit of glue, not too much, and just stick it into the sponge in different places so that the sponge is covered, so that some nice greenery appears and the holiday atmosphere shows up here. In a moment, there will be decorations like baubles, other pine cones because I also have some whitewashed pine cones, signs, and everything else. Let me know if you even like these kinds of decorations that aren't classic decorations, because gold, red, and those kinds of accents that are very familiar, they're basically everywhere, and I'll make that kind of decoration next too. But in colors like silver and white, that's not something you see often, but some people really like those slightly glamorous decorations. Although I have to admit that besides those glamorous ones, the base, those big candles, and these little ornaments, I'll add them here. A bit of forest, a bit of nature. So there will be stars, and will they be cut out of bark again? Because both the brown part and the bleached one fit perfectly here, and also the bleached cones. The subtitles are probably from larch, a bit colored, and they will nicely match the whole decoration. Now comes probably the hardest part, which is to add just enough greenery so that there's not too much of it, so that it doesn't cover up all the open work and the composition, but just enough to hide the technical elements, so it covers those sponges. Look, I arranged these candles a little higher on purpose so that I could put a decorative element underneath. If you want to learn more about making these kinds of centerpieces or other arrangements and get to know other floristry techniques, then of course I encourage you to visit my website archszkolenia.pl. There I have online courses, short ones, also for beginners, so it's worth checking out. You can purchase access. These aren't expensive courses, and you can really benefit from them because I explain step by step how to make, for example, Christmas centerpieces like these. My dear friends, as I mentioned, I've already started decorating. I'm taking out the pins. I joke that they're pins from the baubles, and I'm attaching them to this centerpiece with glue. It's good to have different sizes of these decorations, so I have both larger and smaller ones. Here, the structure and also the transparency give us different effects. But I also have these small pine cones, which are an additional finer element that will fill the baubles. I've actually put them everywhere already. I'm placing the last one here, the matte one, a bit higher on the other side. And now it's time to create some space and make some cool focal points with these stars. And the stars will be in different places. They won't just be flat either, but will be attached somewhere underneath, somewhere here in the space on the branches. And all of this will give that effect, the effect of being open work and spatial. And you absolutely have to be careful not to get glue on your hand because it's very, very hot. I'm adding these stars, I think. Yes, 6 pieces should be fine. What I do is I put in groups. In this case, well, here the groups can't really be bigger than 2 elements because they're quite big. If these stars were smaller, then you could put, for example, 3, 2 together, and a third one a bit apart. But with bigger ones like these, I think 2 is already enough. And finally, I fill in the gaps with these little cones in places where the sponge is still showing through and I can't cover it with the decoration. Of course, I can still use my spruce, which I can nicely fill in with those tiny branches wherever needed. Let me know if you like that it's off to the side like this, or if you would have done it in the center, or if you like that it sticks out above the plate and goes slightly upward. And in general, let me know if you prefer more modern forms, but still within the Christmas tradition. Here, the main modern element is the slant. Secondly, the baubles are turned the other way. And thirdly, there's a slight openness. There isn't as much material. And let me know if you prefer more modern forms or if you like the traditional colors and shapes better. Does this remind you of Christmas at your place? I'm keeping my fingers crossed for decorating your apartments and homes, and I encourage you to watch the next episode. See you soon.